Who would have thought in 1962 that a small discount store in Rogers, Arkansas would become the employer of 2.2 million people today? This is the story of how Walmart uses AI to automate supplier negotiations. Back in 2019, Walmart embarked on a journey to automate supplier negotiations. Today, the retail giant has over 100,000 suppliers across the world in 19 countries and makes over $600 billion in annual revenue. Given the scale of its operations, even small savings in business processes can yield significant returns. So, how did Walmart automate supplier negotiations? What challenges did they face and how did they overcome them? And what was the outcome of this initiative? We will find out in today's episode of Sage Professionals, along with my helpful assistant, Victoria. Hey, Victoria, what's the challenge that Walmart was facing?
Walmart, like most organizations with large procurement operations, can't possibly conduct focused negotiations with all of its 100,000 plus suppliers. Consequently, as much as 20,000 suppliers are left out of negotiations because they're on the tail end of Walmart's supplier list and therefore sign vanilla agreements.
Thanks, Victoria. So, the first question that comes to mind is why are procurement negotiations important? You see, if you speak with any buyer or procurement professional, they will quickly let you know that negotiations aren't always about price. There are different factors that impact the business that they are serving, such as lead time, or in other words, the amount of time that it takes the supplier to ship and deliver the goods that you paid for. Other factors include payment schedules, product guarantees, consistent performance. So all of these factors go into the negotiation. That's number one. Number two, when we're dealing with 100,000 suppliers, there has to be a priority among those 100,000. And in Walmart's case, there are 20,000 suppliers, so that's almost 20%, or that's 20% of their supplier base that aren't getting enough attention, and therefore there is a missed opportunity for Walmart and the supplier. And when Victoria used the term tail end in this context means that these suppliers have no or indirect impact on revenue. So imagine walking into the restroom and seeing napkins, seeing soap. Perhaps you see a machine that cuts. If you go like out to the bakery section, you might find a machine that cuts bread. All of these items aren't used for resale, so you're not buying a bread cutting machine, right? It's a machine that the employee uses to cut bread. Also, you're not buying soap when you're in the restroom. You're using it you use soap, after wash, or during your washing your hands. Hopefully, all the listeners wash their hands when they're using the restroom. But back to the point, these are the items that are considered on a lower priority or the tail end because they don't directly generate revenue. So the question is, why don't Walmart just hire more buyers? Back to you, Victoria.
The cost of hiring more human buyers to negotiate with suppliers would exceed any additional value.
And that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. Why would you spend more money hiring people dealing with suppliers who aren't generating revenue directly to Walmart, right? That's not the wisest move. So, how do we deal with that? Victoria, how did Walmart address this challenge?
In 2019, Walmart decided to address this challenge by experimenting with a conversational AI solution offered by Pactum AI, which would negotiate with human suppliers on behalf of Walmart. But there was a big problem.
Uh oh, what was the problem, Victoria?
The solution was quickly overshadowed by COVID-19 and therefore postponed to a later date. 2 years later, though, a champion named Michael DeWitt arose from the Walmart International Organization and revived the initiative. In January 2021, Walmart was ready to conduct a production pilot in its Canadian business.
So there were a couple of terms used in Victoria's speech. There was the word experimentation, and then there is another word, pilot. What's the difference between an experiment and a pilot? Because they both carry a sense of, a sense of not being sure or not being firm with the project. First of all, when I heard 2019, there was no surprise that COVID was somehow associated with that. And these things happen all the time. An experiment is when a company uses a piece of software with with the intention of exploring it. So they're not using the software because they are 100% certain that it's going to help them. However, they're using it because they want to explore how that software helps them. They want to feel confident about it. They want to test it. They want to try it out in a controlled environment, normally called a sandbox environment, which is an environment where you can break things, you can try everything you ever want without impacting live and production systems, without impacting your customers, the other employees, or anyone else, right? Whereas a pilot, especially a production pilot, this is a small scale software that is deployed in production, so real people are using it. The impact of this pilot is real, it affects the business. However, that impact is going to be minimal. So it's minimal, it's controlled, and if things do not go according to plan, or if there is harm as a result of that pilot, then that pilot can be quickly put down or taken care of. Right on the upside of pilots, pilots are mini scale experiments. It's not really an experiment. I want to use the word experiment again here, but they are a small scale implementation of the real scenario, and we will find out exactly how the pilot looks like in a bit. But that's the difference between an experiment and a pilot very quickly. Another thing to note for those who have the entrepreneurial spirits, who might want to go into business, be it software or otherwise, when you are dealing with an enterprise customer such as Walmart, so put yourself in the shoes of the supplier of this software, right? They engaged with Walmart, their potential customer, in 2019, and they only were able to reach a pilot stage in 2021. That's 2 years. And then the pilot takes time. So imagine your business has to survive for at least 2.5 years. I mean, there are probably some other engagements or some communication that weren't mentioned here, but that's at least 2.5 years of engaging with the client, traveling, communicating, paying payroll without making a single dollar out of that client, and maybe you won't ever make a single dollar from that client. So enterprise B2B sales is a place that is, where you have to have a very long runway, but if it's successful, then there's a lot of money to be made in that deal. So keep that in mind, for those who would like to break into entrepreneurship or build their own companies. The last takeaway from what Victoria had shared is the importance of having a champion on the client side. So in this case, Michael, what are Michael's motivations? Why did Michael take the leadership of implementing this solution? Was it just because he wanted to save Walmart money? Well, of course, that's an important consideration because that falls under his objectives in the company. But also, it's important for Michael, and this is my extrapolation and from my experience of working with B2B enterprise clients, is that there has to be a motive for that leader to do the work, to put in the work, to put in the effort. And that motive, from my perspective, might have been, building a reputation, an image that this leader adopts new technologies that save the company money and resources. That leader appears on the Harvard Business Review and talks about his achievements. That leader will become in demand in the market of procurement because he has that experience under his belt, and he actually delivered on it. Even if this pilot was the end of it, so pilot and end, that's still very valuable, and that's still something desirable in an increasingly AI dependent market. So I'll end with that here and then go over to Victoria to ask her if she can share more details about the pilot.
The pilot, which lasted 3 months, involved a diverse group of stakeholders, including 89 suppliers, 5 buyers, representatives from finance, treasury, and legal, as well as Pactum AI, the solution creator. The retailer focused on suppliers with accurate payment term data, clear opportunities to improve payment terms, and the goods not for resale product category.
So thanks, Victoria, for introducing us to the supplier, or the supplier of the software, rather, which is Pactum AI. Pactum AI is the company that created this supplier negotiations tool. As you can see, there are many stakeholders involved, 89 suppliers in the mix, 5 buyers, representatives from finance, treasury, and legal, right? Add to that the team members of Pactum AI, which can include the account manager, the sales engineer, perhaps the customer success manager, and there could be product managers involved sometimes. There could be developers involved sometimes, depending on how deep you go technically. So the alignment between stakeholders is a challenge in itself, and the fact that the pilot lasted 3 months, frankly, is pretty impressive. I mean, imagine aligning, the 5 buyers and team members from Pactum, and say someone from finance. Imagine aligning them on a weekly basis. Imagine the amount of effort that goes into finding available time slots for all these people to meet, given their busy schedules and their day-to-day work, right? So 3 months is impressive. I'm wondering, before I tell you what I'm wondering about, um, the Victoria mentioned the goods not for resale product category as the chosen category by Walmart. So that category falls under the tail end type of suppliers that we mentioned earlier, right? It makes total sense to go for the goods not for resale category because they carry the most friction. These are costs that do not generate direct revenue. So excellent choice by Walmart. So back to Victoria. Hey Victoria, what was Walmart hoping to achieve with this production pilot?
The desired outcome Walmart was shooting for is to win payment discounts or extended payment terms without discounts. Also, Walmart International estimated that the system would yield a positive return on investment if the chatbot could close deals with 20% of the suppliers involved in the pilot.
So there are two scenarios that there was a scenario that is broken down into two sections that Walmart was hoping to achieve. One is getting a discount. So, dear supplier, I will pay you earlier in return for a discount. Or, dear supplier, I will pay you later. So let's say I was supposed to pay you in 30 days, but hey, give me the option of paying you in 60 days instead, right? But I don't get any discounts because I paid you, 30 days later. And Walmart probably the panel that is involved in this pilot decided that if 20% of the suppliers in this pilot agree to the terms of Walmart that are presented through this conversational AI chatbot, then that would be a success. Now, why did they choose 20%? And why was the deals closed the metrics of choice? That's an interesting question, because by the end of the day, you want to know, how many hours of a buyer's equivalent time were saved, right? How many suppliers were dealt with without having to hire, right? The bottleneck is buyers, right? That's the bottleneck. We can't hire more buyers to deal with the number of suppliers we have. So why wasn't the metric directly correlated with the buyers themselves? That's the question I have in mind. Most likely, that 20% of deals closed has the domino effect into other metrics that tells them if this is successful or not. Keep in mind that this solution probably costs in the hundreds of thousands, if not in the millions of dollars range. So the question is also, did we cover our costs, not just save a bunch of buyers' time, right? Um, and one last point, there's actually benefit on the finance and treasury side in this deal, in addition to the procurement side. And the benefit is that a treasury manager. So who's a treasury manager? A treasury manager is someone who manages the treasury, or let's say the cash flow of the business. Sometimes they can have too much cash, and sometimes they can have too little cash. If there is too much cash in the company, then they're missing out on an opportunity to invest that money into something that generates more money, such as ETFs, stocks, bonds, etc. If they are short on money, then they want to hold on to that money and not pay suppliers right away, right? They want to keep that money. So when Walmart is able to pay early for a discount, then they're saving money. If they're not able to pay early for a discount, then they're preserving their cash and paying later, paying the supplier later. So it's to Walmart seems like a big win, but I'm wondering what's in it for the supplier. Victoria, what's in it for the supplier?
The supplier gets the option to change Walmart's right to terminate agreements immediately without cause, known as termination for convenience, to providing a 30, 60, or 90-day written termination notice. Walmart would also selectively offer suppliers opportunities for growth in assortment and sales volume in exchange for price discounts.
So this shows you the power of Walmart. Imagine that the supplier is presented with, the win. The win of the supplier is that there is no longer a termination for convenience clause in the agreement. That just shows you how powerful Walmart really is. And imagine that you are a supplier to Walmart, right? You're buying equipment. Let's say you sell ovens, right? And each oven costs you, I don't know, $75,000. I'm just making a number up, right? So you have $75,000 per oven in inventory. And then all of a sudden Walmart, and then obviously you buy that inventory so that you can serve Walmart and other customers, right? But then out of the blue, Walmart says, "Hey, we're terminating our agreement. We don't want to buy ovens from you." You're like, What? I have like $500,000 in inventory of ovens. I was counting on you. I was hoping to sell you an oven for the location that you're opening next month, or that location that you're opening 3 months from now in so and so city, right? So instead of being screwed right away, Walmart is saying, "Well, I'm going to tell you that you're going to be screwed in 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days." So that's what the supplier gets, right? However, that $75,000 oven could be sold to Walmart for $200,000. So a single sale to Walmart can mean, for some businesses that could be retirement, that they could, make so much money that they can just close the business and retire because of the scale that Walmart operates in. So those are my thoughts on this, but I'm interested in hearing, how did this all pan out? Hey, Victoria, how did the solution work in practice?
Internal buyers selected the suppliers to target and created training scenarios for Pactum AI's machine learning algorithm. The scenarios were used to create structured scripts to guide suppliers through negotiations. Suppliers could respond to scenarios at their own pace.
So I've actually built chatbots in the past, and based on everything that I learned about Pactum and Walmart and the context of supplier negotiations in this story or case study, the machine learning part in this solution, or the AI part in this solution, plays a very minimal role. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The reason why I say that is because there is structured scripts that buyers put together. What happens is that there is a flow, right? There is a flow, a sequence of steps and events that are pre-configured. The intelligence, or the AI part, comes into play when the supplier types something in and the bot understands the intention of the supplier and routes the supplier to the place in the workflow, or to the step in the workflow that Walmart wants them to be in. Does that make sense? So instead of saying if then else, instead of saying do this then this, if it's yes do that, if it's no do that, no, there is still a sequence, but instead of the if then else, there's a natural language understanding component in the chatbot that knows where to direct the supplier based on the things that they're typing in, based on the things that are saying. So I'm curious to know, what was the solution of this? Victoria, what was the outcome of this solution?
The chatbot successfully negotiated agreements with 64% of the 89 participating suppliers, exceeding the 20% target, and achieved an average negotiation turnaround of 11 days. Walmart gained, on average, 1.5% in savings on the spend negotiated and an extension of payment terms to an average of 35 days.
All right, let's break these numbers down. 11 days turnaround time. So imagine this. You're a supplier. You're a Walmart supplier. You get an email that says, hey, I want to negotiate the terms of our agreement. You click on a link. It takes you to a chatbot. The chatbot walks you through steps. Step 1, 2, 3. I think there are 6 steps. As you're going through those steps, you are negotiating with the bot. The negotiation guardrails, if you will, are the ones that we mentioned previously. Pay early, get this. I'll pay you early, give me a discount, pay you later, and so on and so forth. So that negotiation process took around 11 days, okay, on average. Next, what did Walmart gain? Walmart gained an average extension of 35 days, and the cost of negotiations, so they call it spend negotiated, went down by 1.5%. Now, one might think the spend negotiated might relate to the price. And that actually could be it. Yeah, the spend, scratch that. The 1.5%, and by the way, I'm doing this spontaneously, so it's not like, my thoughts are being, spoken spontaneously on this podcast. So I may make some mistakes sometimes. So my understanding of the spend negotiated is like the amount of money that we normally spend, but have negotiated it down by 1.5%. So instead of spending $100, we spent $98.5. Not only that, but we extended the payment terms by an average of 35 days. That's honestly fantastic, because you might look at the 1.5% and think that's a small number, but at the scale of Walmart, scale is everything, right? If we're talking about $10 million, or heck, let's say, just say $100 million, and that's not a big number, for a company that has a revenue of $600 billion per year. So 1.5% savings on $100 million, that's $1.5 million saved, in addition to the 35 days average of additional time to pay suppliers. So excellent results just based on the numbers that I'm looking at here. Um, However, that's excellent for Walmart. I'm curious to know what the vendors think or the suppliers think. So, what were the suppliers' thoughts on the pilot, Victoria?
In post pilot interviews with suppliers that engaged in successful negotiations, 83% of them described the system as easy to use and liked the ability to make a counteroffer and the time the system gave them to think about the negotiation at their own pace.
All right, so it seems like Victoria was on her own pace. She got a vibe, so the way the sentence was spoken was a bit out of sync. But the point is, adoption is important, right? 83% describe the system easier to use. What I mean by that, by adoption, is that if you spend money, time, and energy on a system where a third party is expected to take part in, but that third party finds it difficult to work with, or there's a lot of friction or bottleneck, or they just hate it, then you're not going to get a lot of adoption on that system, but you're actually instead going to get a lot of tickets and emails from suppliers complaining about your system. So, and that's going to cost you money. So that's important. So good thing that suppliers liked it. um, and also, we just mentioned one metric, right? 83% of them describe the system as easy to use and like the ability to make a counter offer. However, that's not the full picture. I'm sure there are other reactions. I'm sure, there might be other metrics that we don't know about. But generally speaking, and based on the information that Victoria and I have, suppliers are generally happy. On an NPS scale, NPS is Net Promoter Score. 83% falls on the green side, so it's a good side. It's like, you're doing well. That's kind of the indication when we say NPS. Victoria, now that the pilot was over, did Walmart decide to buy Pactum AI and roll it out globally?
Yes. After the production pilot, Walmart improved the scenarios and scripts and extended the solution to suppliers in the United States, Chile, and South Africa. So far, the chatbot has closed deals with 68% of the suppliers approached and generated an average savings of 3%.
Excellent. So the solution was expanded globally into the countries that Victoria mentioned, and that's actually a testament to the success of the solution. Whenever there's a pilot that goes live in production on multiple levels in different countries, different departments, etc., that's proof that it works, right? And that's awesome for Pactum. It's awesome for Walmart. So congrats. 1.5% savings was excellent. 3% is fantastic. It's amazing, right? Again, go back to that $100 million calculation. $3 million in savings. That's big, right? That's like, I don't know how many employees you can hire with that, depending on the countries you work in, of course. It would be interesting to know what's the new sample size though, because in the pilot there were 89 suppliers only. So as the sample size of suppliers grows, how does that affect suppliers' NPS scores, their opinion of the system? There's a question mark, right? As the sample size of suppliers grows, which you know another story for another day. All right, well, thank you for tuning into another episode of Sage Professionals. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover next, please let me know on LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow me on LinkedIn for more content. See you next time, Sager.